Hello, everybody. I start the recording now. My name is Elisabeth Heismann. This is session B9 on the 4th of the 11th, 21, with the title Relating to Nonviolent Resistance in a Secondary School in London. I'm a director of a training company in London called Behaviour Action and Practice, and this is a social enterprise community company where we offer nonviolent resistance training for professionals from mental health, social care, justice and education and youth services. Last year, we piloted training in an inner London secondary school, which we want to tell you about today. So please, all my co-presenters, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Sarah March. I'm a senior leader in an inner London secondary school. Unfortunately, the rest of my colleagues weren't able to be with me today, but you will hear from them through the presentation. The main ones are Amelia Aiken, who's our mental health lead, and Carl Edwards, who is a behaviour practitioner.
Jane, you need to sort of unmute.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name's Jane Prescott, and I work as a school counsellor in a secondary school. It's a different secondary school, and I was part of this pilot project, that you're going to hear about this evening. But I have facilitated many parent programmes using NVR.
Hi, I'm Jacqui, and I joined an NVR course in 2014. It was a parent course, and since then I've facilitated in various programmes, and I was also part of this pilot with the secondary school.
Thank you. We will aim to have enough time for answering questions at the end, hopefully 10 minutes at least. And while we talk, could you please put your questions and comments into the chat, which we will pick up. And before we start, please put an answer to the following question into the chat. What comes into your mind when you hear nonviolent resistance? A sentence, a word, anything which comes into your mind.
Yeah, that's great. So we've got your answers coming through. So Carmen said asserting difference without violence, and that's exactly what I now understand MVR to be. So it's about, in a controlled, calm, non-violent through actions, but also through words, way of creating a change in behaviour to make it become what we want it to be. I've put the non-violent resistance principles onto the screen now, because this is where we all started when NVR came into our school. And you will hear shortly in a video actually why it was important that we brought NVR into our school. We'll also keep coming back to—
Can I just stop you, Sarah, and just quickly maybe Carmen and Jacqui just introduce themselves? Well, there are only two people, so we can probably do that, can we, Sarah?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so Carmen and Jacqui, can you just say you know, a couple of sentences about yourself and what, you know, came for here.
Is it okay if I go first, Jacqui?
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm Carmen Garcia, and I live and work in London, even though I was born in Spain, and hence the accent. I came into the workshop because I actually work as a systemic family therapist in child and adolescent mental health services, and teach family therapy as well at King's. I came to this workshop because I have come across nonviolent resistance in many ways and in many occasions, and I'm always interested on it. So I was really curious. I wanted to see how you did it in school, and yeah, I wish we could expand it more, because it's a wonderful way of managing difficulties with behavior. So yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. And Jacqui? I don't think we can hear you, Jacqui. No, we can't hear you. Can you put it in the chat? Can you put something in the chat and try to sort of...
Now can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, there's a problem in the earphone. Okay, good evening to all of you. I am Jyoti from India, and today we have a great festival, the main festival of India, the Diwali.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a festival of lights, and you can even see this, listen the sound of the bomb firecrackers inside me. And I came to the topic of the violence, because actually I feel more strengthened when I take my standpoint or defend anyone with the non-violence. I feel more confident and more strength from inner side, so that my natural ability is to relate myself to the non-violence, and I always go for it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jyoti. Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I'll carry on. So as there's only two of you, if you have any burning questions, if you just want to use the raise your hand function, and we can see if we answer them then, or if we come back to it later on. As I said, this is the NVR map, and this is what we were presented with at the start of our course, and we're going to keep coming back to this through the session and look at the different circles that make up the toolkit within NVR. I'm going to just start off by picking out three very important principles that kind of, before we can even understand and discuss, we need to really pin down what these things are. The first one is all around relationships, and the phrase that actually all of us that did the course now go by is connect before correct. And this was so apparent as a result of the pandemic, where we were all wearing face masks. And I felt definitely we just lost our connection with our students. But through the most important thing for me through NVR is that without the relationship, you cannot exact change. So we have to have that idea of a supportive relationship before we can change behavior. This is achieved through parental presence. Now, as teachers, obviously we're not parents, but we can still have a presence, and we need to acknowledge the importance of parental presence in our students' lives. It's that idea that the child knows that they are held in mind by their parent, but also that the child holds their parent in mind and knows their values and understands what they would want. And again, another favorite catchphrase, strike while the iron is cold. It's all about non-violence with your words, with your actions. You can resist behavior, but you don't need to escalate that behavior. You don't need to get into an argument. You don't need to get into a conflict. You can stop it, say no, but then come back later when the emotion has had a chance to cool. So I'm going to start off by showing you a video, just telling you a little bit about our school context and the reasons behind why we chose to engage with NVR. And I just have to share in a different way.
If you can't, I can try. I can try.
Got it.
Shall
I've got it.
You've done it. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, apologies to be recording this rather than presenting in person. Our school is in Hackney, which is an inner London borough. The school is larger than the average size school. Majority of students are from minority ethnic groups, Black background, Turkish background students. A high proportion of our students are eligible for pupil premium, which means additional funding from the government in recognition of some of the vulnerabilities around those students. For example, they might be eligible for free school meals because of their low income of their parents. The proportion of students who speak a first language other than English is higher than average, and the proportion of students with disabilities or special educational needs is well above the national average. So what we were noticing was happening is that, you know, behaviour sanctions ended up being too harsh, too often, that behaviour sanctions weren't being differentiated in that system. So students with certain needs might be sanctioned for those needs, rather than a different approach being adopted if there was an identified need. And therefore we were seeing a lot of escalation. So a student might get set at detention on a Tuesday, not attend it, and by Friday be sat in a long 2-hour detention with a member of leadership staff, which wouldn't necessarily prevent the same behaviour from occurring in the next week. We also realised that the majority of students at our school do the right thing the majority of the time, and they don't necessarily need these systems. And so these big behaviour systems ended up requiring a lot of work and time and energy in order to administer them and carry them out, but then they would end up being populated by the same sorts of students every single week, and it wasn't having the kind of impact that we wanted to see, especially when we look at the nature of those students and realise that there might be conduct problems, neurodevelopmental conditions, and impact of child protection concerns and safeguarding issues. So therefore we were using a blunt tool, and we wanted to improve the way we were doing that. And at the time that we started training and staff and thinking about this in more detail, I also had a puppy, and we were thinking about, you know, when we first got her, she'd growl at people when if she was asleep on the sofa and you tried to move her off, she'd growl at you. And at first we were really strict with her and we'd like pull her off the sofa, and then we saw a trainer and the trainer said, if you do that every time she's on the sofa, you're actually more likely to get tension, so you're more likely to get growling. Whereas if you deal with it positively and you treat her off the sofa, then she will learn that it's actually what you expect from her behaviour, the reward for following the good the good behaviour, which is to get down without growling, and that for her, she can't understand the direct link between the behaviour and the consequence. So she doesn't understand that the growling results in a negative. She can't make that connection. Also, that if she has a history of a negative experience in a certain time, so if you think of this in the context of a classroom in a school, if the student and the member of staff have got a very negative history with escalating or identified behaviour concerns that are ongoing, you actually end up with more likelihood of escalating behaviour concerns. And yet we think about this really carefully when we train pets, but in schools we have systems that maybe perpetuate and increase the likelihood of challenging behaviour, and or at least don't reduce that challenging behaviour, and certainly stand against some of our priorities for mental health and well-being.
Okay, so that's just a little introduction about our school and why it is that we went down this route of NVR. Just to clarify some terms, SEND, special educational needs and disability. CAMS, Carmen, know all about that one. Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. We refer to our heads of year, our pastoral leaders, as PALs and APALs. And we refer quite a lot to RJ, or restorative justice meetings, throughout this presentation. And I've just realised I didn't share my screen again. And that would be helpful. So why MVR in a UK school? As you heard from Amelia, we were reviewing our behaviour management systems and our policies, and we realised that what we were doing didn't fit with the new drive that we were putting on, that we were pushing for within the school, and was actually potentially negatively affecting mental health. We had a CAMS lead within the school who directed us towards MVR as something we might want to consider, and it fitted in with the new ethos. So during actually the first lockdown, 30 members of staff, including pastoral leaders and a couple of the senior management team, including myself, took part in this level 1 programme. It was really successful. We were able to disseminate it to the rest of the school and share ideas, and we went on then starting with 9 of us on the level 2 programme, where we had to bring our own project into the school. And what you're going to hear about as we move on is actually the projects that came out of that level 2 training. So we split up into 3 groups, and within those groups delivered 3 separate, planned, took part in, evaluated 3 separate projects within the school, all based around these NVR principles that we'd been taught. Some of these are going to be introduced by me, some of them by videos, just so you get the full experience of what was said. We actually, after we'd done our projects, we shared them as a team with Jane, Elisabeth, Jacqui, our supervisors. And we were lucky enough that that meeting was recorded. So we've got loads and loads of little really important sound bites that we'll share with you. So I now need to share this one.
I just wanted to
The
ask,
project that
can I just ask, everybody able to follow? Yeah, your tea as well, yeah? I hope you can follow. It's not too fast or too slow. Okay. Okay, go on.
The project that I took part in was with 2 colleagues, and we each within our project did our own separate piece of work. So one piece of work was via our pastoral system, a year 8 tutor group. They're 12 or 13 years old in year 8. There was a year 9 group that my colleague worked with, and a year 9 SEN group who my other colleague worked with, who she was actually the teacher of that group. And what we were aiming to do with our project is recognise that there are sometimes those classes or groups that get a reputation around the school, reputation with each other, or even that reputation might be borne out by being, for whatever reason, a challenging cohort in and of itself, and need intervention in order to work with the whole group in order to move things forward. We felt that sometimes the way that groups were identified wasn't necessarily a true reflection of the challenges. Sometimes it was that there would be like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but that nevertheless the experience of the students in the class and the teachers of those groups were negative and needed to be addressed.
So there was this real divide and this real kind of resistance every time that they would go to this specific classroom, which was in a separate building, which again is problematic. And it was really interesting because I teach those same students English in a slightly bigger class, so we would have our English lesson together and it would be fantastic, really positive relationships, lots of participation, really what I would expect from having good relationships with students in the classroom. And then we would go literally straight afterwards to this lesson, and it was completely different, and it was sabotage. it wasn't just, oh, that's something that's a bit unfortunate, you're having a difficult day. It was intentional sabotage, which is, you know, that's real communication, isn't it, of something that is troubling them.
Right, so there we saw a little clip from one of the projects as to actually one of the things that went wrong. The group tried to solve the problem by removing the students, and there we have one of our key learning points, that actually MVR isn't about seeing the child or the parent or the teacher as the problem. It's about seeing the problem as the problem and working together to resolve it. And by removing students, we'd actually isolated them, and they communicated in the best way that they knew how. So one of the things that we all had to do was really self-reflect. And unfortunately, Carl's not here with us today, but you get an idea about the passion that he brought to this and the importance that he saw in himself to make sure that he self-reflected.
First, I had to look at myself. When I did an MVR, I had to look at myself. I'm a disciplinarian. There's no ground there. I am a disciplinarian. Straight to the point. Anybody who know me know how I'm straight and direct. To the point that people just think I'm rude. So be it. And I had to look, when I started MVR, I had to look at myself. I had to ask myself some hard questions. Because when you spend 22 years in the army, you trust me, and you see the things that I've seen, there's certain things you want kids to do. And I'm there for kids. But with this program, I have to look at myself.
Okay, so yeah, that's Carl. He's fantastic. He cares deeply about students. He's been doing this for years. The kids all love him. But even he needed to look at himself and realize that there was a need for change. There was a need to do things slightly differently. And the MVR tool that we were given to help us do this is called the self-announcement. It's actually a little bit cathartic. There's a lot of self-care involved in it. It's a very non-judgmental statement. It's you talking to yourself, acknowledging the need for change. Oh, and I've ummed and ahed over to whether to share my self-announcement with you. And I think I'm going to, because I think it really nicely illustrates through this journey, some of my personal journey. And this is about a student who I was acting head of year, and I really struggled. But the good news is the end of the story is going to be a lot better. So I'm going to read you my announcement. Over the last year, I've battled in my relationship to support a particular student. I want to support her in her education, but struggle to notice what I can provide to ensure she is safe. Instead of building the relationship, I've passed the student around to make things easier for myself. I want to be able to support the student to feel nurtured and safe in the school environment, being able to build positive relationships with others. I will use key staff and support agencies as well as her family to better model relationships and improve outcomes. I enjoy my role as a teacher and want all students to feel welcome. So that was my self-announcement to myself, and it helped me to understand why this relationship was difficult, but also how I could change. And these self-announcements were another tool that we were given, but they led really nicely onto the next tool, which is an announcement. But before that, I'm going to tell a little bit more of the story of me and this student. So, as I said, I was her head of year, and then we had a lockdown and we had no contact because it was a family that was very difficult to reach out with. But now I actually teach her. Thank goodness I made steps in the year from last September to reconcile, repair our relationship so that we could start to move forwards with seeing the changes. As a teacher, it can be quite hard to give these reconciliation gestures because you can't give students gifts, you can't buy them things, but you can lend them a pen, or you can notice that they're not feeling so good that day. And through those little actions, we build relationships to allow us to continue and to make the change. So those reconciliation gestures go into our NVR map. The other thing I talked about was announcements. And an announcement, rather than being a self-announcement to yourself, is an announcement to an individual, or in our case in school, a group of students. We're going to go back to our first project dealing with a group of students. We're going to hear from Hannah, another member of the group, as to how she supported another teacher. So this video is a little bit quiet. If we can't hear it, Elisabeth, just let me know and I'll stop it and fill in the detail.
A particular member of staff was off for quite a considerable amount of time, so they would have had lots of cover. So there was a kind of sense of the relationship hadn't had a chance to be built or formed successfully, and so there was maybe some underlying resentment there between, particularly coming from the young people, feeling like it wasn't a secure
I can't listen properly.
space or a secure relationship.
Yeah, that video has been a little problematic. So it was about supporting a Year 9 languages group where the teacher had been away, they hadn't had a chance to build a relationship. There was a lot of negativity in the room. The teacher was tearing his hair out. The students were fed up and said they weren't learning. So what Hannah did was she spoke with the teacher. They identified the issue, and once they'd identified, you know, some issue and where they really needed to work on, and Hannah with the teacher took out a group of students, the ones that she thought she would be able to get on side. And she and the teacher did an announcement. They said, this is the problem. This needs to change. And then they posed a question. What are you going to do? And then they sat and they waited. And eventually the students started to throw out ideas of ways that they could move this forward. And what had been created was a group of supporters for the teacher in the classroom, a group of people who were on his side, well, not on his side, they were all on the same side. They all wanted the same thing. And they were able to bring the other students on board and ended up having much more successful lessons where there was learning taking place. And actually, it didn't just improve practice for that class. That teacher also experienced more success with lots of their other classes as well. So here we add to our NVR map again with our supporters. And a supporter is anyone who can offer support to take a stand against that negativity, that what we see as poor behavior. They don't necessarily need to be active, they don't need to challenge it, but they're there to support. They might support the parent, the teacher, or the individual who is displaying those negative behaviors. And this is probably the area that has been most changing for the majority of staff in our school, the idea of that supportive community, both with the staff, but also within the classroom with the students, that we are a community and we're all in this together. So that's the end of that first project. We're just going to hear a very short clip about setting up a parent group to deliver NVR principles. So there was a pair who set up this group and they did much like we're doing now, they shared the principles of NVR and how they can be applied to help parents who are struggling with their children. It was difficult because it had to be on Zoom. These sessions have now become face-to-face, but what is interesting is that the parents who engaged in those first set of sessions are coming back and are willing to share with the others. Let me share this video. In this video, Gemma introduces another concept and how it can be used. Is that working? No.
No.
Let me try again.
I can try to share it. Or... Yeah, okay.
Being able to use it and deliver it, it does affect your positively, hugely positively. It does affect your training and the way you approach particular skills and particular conversations. For example, using those baskets, I had a re-entry meeting. There was an individual, there was a student who got excluded for 5 days, and I knew that time at home sometimes is quite an intense time for them, and can be seen as quite a negative time. And it was actually because we delivered it that week that it was just in the front of my brain, and I was just like, I'm going to use this. So actually getting mum and son to go, what is it that you love? Let's talk about this rainbow basket. What is it that you love about your mum? What is it that you love about your son? And it was great. It was wonderful. And actually having that conversation with that student and that parent, and knowing that knowing that we've had that conversation together and we are there supporting, we're in a triangle, you know, here's the student, here's the school, here's the home, and we're all working together, that the relationship with that student has actually been hugely positively impacted as well.
Right, so that is our tool, the baskets, presented by Gemma there as a way that she used to improve the relationship between a child and their parent, but also bringing herself into that picture as the school. Again, on my personal story, this tool, the baskets, really helped me to identify what it was that I needed to focus on with my challenging student. Sorry, Carmen, do you want to ask your question?
Sorry, I was going to ask a question, but then my phone is ringing, so I might have to pick up that call. So
okay,
I'm sorry, just going to be as brief as possible.
Yeah, no problem.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we have these 4 baskets. It was introduced as 3 baskets, but that was all looking at the negative. And the thing that really helped for me to recognize my relationship with this student was the rainbow basket. Everything positive. And it just brought that student into a different light in my eyes. The reason that we have these baskets is so we can prioritize the behaviors that we need to change. Focus on the ones first that are dangerous. Then the ones that you need to draw attention to, but don't necessarily need to step in and change, but that's your medium-sized basket. Once the behaviors in the small basket are dealt with, the ones from your medium basket move in, they take over that place. And then in the large basket are all those things that are really annoying, but they don't need to be dealt with now. So again, these baskets we tend to use with school staff who are, oh, this child can't do anything. We can't get them to do anything. This is what we use. We go, right, let's prioritize the things that we want to change. Let's prioritize what we want to deal with. deal with that, but let's also really recognize the positives as well and why we need to work with this student. So again, we add into our map. And you see we're really, really close now to building this internal circle. So we've talked about 2 projects, transforming a class or group and setting up a parent group. We now move on to the 3rd project, which is the one that I was involved in, where we use table tennis to deliver NVR to our students. And I'm going to let Mohammed tell you why it is that we chose to use table tennis.
Table tennis has been a sport that I've enjoyed for most of my life and most of my time playing it. It's a sport that I first started playing in secondary school, and I found it very interesting because it was very different from your standard things like football and basketball and volleyball. It was just a much more technical sport, much more fast-paced because of how close you are to your opponent. And in that sense, I found myself being more disciplined in playing it, because there was also, motivators where you have to, do well in school, with your schoolwork, your homework, just to make sure that you're on track so that you could have more time to play the sport. And I've kind of kept that with me as I've grown.
Okay, so as I say, that's Mohammed, and he is now 25 years old. He's a qualified engineer working to keep transport moving in our country. But he still comes back. He still spends time with us, and he mentors some of our players as well. So this is our school table tennis team. They are the under-19 East London champions at boys and girls level. So we're doing something right. But what's interesting about this group of students is some of them are fantastic in the classroom all the time, but there are some of them who have posed a significant challenge. And it's been recognized that through table tennis, Carl and I were able to alter some of their mindsets to get them to do a little bit more of what their teachers needed them to, and a little bit less of the things that were getting in the way. Before we undertook the MVR training, we were aware of the therapeutic benefits of table tennis. It's highly focused, it's very repetitive, it's got that rhythmic sound, so it's a very therapeutic thing. But before we did the MVR course, we were often asked, what is it that you do to these children to put them under your spell? And we could never really answer the question. So we just treat them like children. We're kind, we're patient, we talk to them. They do what we ask them to, and it seems like it's working in the classroom a little bit as well. But actually, through doing the NVR course, we realized that what we were doing was implementing a lot of the tools that we were being taught. And with NVR, it allowed us to almost put a new spin on what we were doing and gave us an answer to the questions that people were asking. Very early on in our project, we sat with Elisabeth, our supervisor, and we wanted to think about what we already did and how we could almost name it using our MVR toolkit. So you'll see examples on the board of things that we did, why we did them, and the NVR concept that they relate to. Sorry, I'm just reading from Carl's script because he's unwell. Just having to flip through a little bit. So we delivered our project, we delivered table tennis to students, we talked to them through our sessions, but we also had our supervision sessions. Now, we got this wrong. We thought our supervision sessions were going to be to talk about the students and the goals that we needed to set them and the things that they needed to do or we could do to help them. No. We did a lot of thinking, yes, about the students, but actually more about ourselves. What did we need to change? What did we need to think about? How were we role models? What role models could we provide? What were our baskets for those students? What were the priorities to focus on? But most importantly, our overall aim, how do we get students to bring it back into the classroom? Each of the sessions we had, we delivered, we had sections for discussion with the students to talk to them about what they needed to do to be successful in the classroom. But actually, we had to change the way we did that to really give them examples. And we ended up going into the classroom with the students, having discussions with them, modeling for them in the classroom. Interestingly, we delivered these sessions alongside our normal table tennis sessions. And we had some student mentors, including Mohammed, but we also had 2 teachers who came to play with us, 2 teachers who learnt table tennis alongside the students. And these were targeted teachers who struggled with building relationships in their classes, but had already demonstrated that they were willing to accept support and change. As I said, we were supported by our clinical supervision, and that made us change our practice. Sorry, I got a little lost. This is our final game. This is our celebration for our project. This is a game we developed where throughout the sessions, when we spoke to students, we took note of their aspirations, the skills they thought they needed, the attributes they had to gain or already had, but also some of the barriers that they felt might prevent them from reaching them. So we developed this game where they had to hit the table tennis ball and they had to get a ball into each of the cups or bowls, and they had to knock the brown pots that there were their barriers off the table. This is no easy task. I don't know if you've played table tennis, but it's not easy to get things into things that shape. So they had to look for support. They had to draw on their skills, but they also had to look for support from their players and mentors around them. And in that way, we developed a common goal. And we actually ended up having to produce this game, not just for our targeted students, but actually for all of our players, because they just wanted to have a go themselves. But the idea of peer support is really important, and we can add this to our MVR map to actually complete the toolkit. Even better than our current players supporting our new players, actually, the targeted students would start to help each other, and they would support us as coaches. They set up equipment, they put it away, they collected balls, they just became members of our table tennis family. We knew that their table tennis ability had improved, but actually they were also starting to do better in the classroom. The teachers as well, they were less reliant on using sanctions. There was less escalation of behaviours beyond what could be dealt with in their classroom. And this really hit home when we gathered data for our final presentation. We couldn't believe what was being said to us by the participants, the teachers and the students. Here we have a quote from a parent as to how he felt his son had changed at home. He seems to be a bit more in control, was the bit that really hit home to me. As I said, we have some comments from a teacher, but most importantly, our final comments from a student. And I'll just leave it to you to watch these videos as they go through, because I think I couldn't say what they're saying any better than they said it themselves. So we start with the teacher.
It allowed me to get a connection with the students, with the boys, with the girls that's outside of science and outside of the classroom. So it allowed me to get an emotional connection and not just an academic side of development. And with that emotional connection playing through sport, something fun, is better. We have a better relationship inside the classroom, and as a result of that, you know, things are getting better in the classroom, such as behavior, you know, following instructions and stuff like that, because I could relate to them with something that's outside of the classroom.
Okay. And with students who have been involved in the project, how have you seen a change in him?
Yes, because before he was disruptive, he wasn't following instructions, but since he got involved with the tennis, the tennis program, playing the table tennis, I could see that now he's listening, and at least he's trying to follow instructions. And now his behavior has changed, and with his behavior, his work has improved as well. It hasn't changed completely, and it's going to change over time, but there's some evidence that his behavior is changing. For example, he's coming in on time, and he's being more polite, and he's getting the work done.
Would you say, for students who you haven't met through the program, would you say your approach with them has changed at all?
Oh yes, because with the tennis, being involved in that, it helps me that I need to take, like, sometimes I need to take a different approach, and I feel that some of that approach could be useful in the classroom, because I feel that in the classroom it could be a bit too regiment, and when you're too regiment, it's you don't get the result that you want. But seeing other Mr. Edwards work with the kids and being involved with them, he sort of have this more coach-like approach, and I feel like I've learned from him. I learned from the kids being in that program, because I believe that that's the type of approach you could have in the classroom and still get the best out of the students as well.
Okay, and so most importantly, finally, a word from the student. This one, when he said it, actually blew my mind, because it hit home to me the difference that such a short action could result in.
Tennis has taught me to respect others and space, and it's taught me a sense of patience and to wait for the right moment to strike. And it's just taught me how to be nice to others and to respect them in their ways.
So that, like I said, that was a comment from one of our students who really struggled to build relationships, but actually through playing table tennis and through the discussions was able to be much more successful in the classroom. Just a final bit from me. Obviously, we did MVR in the school. It was a project undertaken by the school, and it did cause changes. So yes, we had our 3 projects with a very small cohort of people, but actually it guided some whole school change through the inclusion of some of our senior leaders, meaning we were having the discussions with the right people at the right times. So we developed our own guiding principles, which very nicely mesh with the NVR principles. And we developed these 6 areas that everyone is doing the same thing, working consistently. We have a bookmark. It's a statement that allows us to say, we don't want this, but we're going to come back and talk to you later on and strike while the iron is cold. We have our restorative meetings where we draw attention to what we need to see and the reasons why. We have a whole school focus on building relationships with our student. And we have this idea of our on-call behaviour system not being there as a punishment, but being there as a support for the member of staff to get what we need from the students in the classroom. Thank you very much. I know I've spoken quite a long time, but now we are over to Jacqui and Jane.
I just want to say firstly, Sarah, it's just well done. That was absolutely fantastic. You worked so hard on putting everything together. But yeah, so as mentioned before, I work in a different secondary school as a school counsellor, and I was really excited to be invited to be a part of this pilot project, bringing NVR into the school setting, because I've been involved with NVR programmes for many years, but not for schools. They've been with parents. And it just, I mean, I think what it's provided for the school is a common language and a set of principles that can guide them. And the flexibility of these tools as well, the different projects that they got involved with. It was a privilege to be a part of and to see the magic happen. And it was magical. They implemented the principles, they worked extremely hard. And Jacqui, what are your thoughts? Because you were part of the programme as well, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I think that was amazing, Sarah, what you've put together there. That was really good. One of the things that really stood out for me was the project around the table tennis, and the child that was communicating so much better through the communication, the connection with the teachers and with the other students at the school. Yeah, that was one of the things that really stood out for me. I'm just thinking what else there was really. Going through all of the slides and things that you've put there tonight. Sorry, I'm lost for words a bit there.
I just wonder, Jacqui, your experience of, when you came to NVR and you've had someone in your family who had a very different experience. It would have been nice if NVR was in their school, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would have been lovely actually, Jane. Yeah, one of my family members was really struggling at school, and basically there wasn't a connection, or I didn't feel like there was a connection with the school for myself, and a little bit I think from the teachers with my family member. And there was something though that they still remember from the school days, which was when they were moving about from class to class, the head teacher would approach them and chat to them, and that still stands out. That's just a little bit of connection there that, yeah, stands out for them still today.
It goes back to that connection before correction, doesn't it? I'm very, very mindful of time, and Carmen, I can see that you've got your hand up, so do please ask away. We can lead on to sort of question time now.
All right, so I think my question is about the motivation to start the program, because I know how difficult it can get between parents and teachers, when they both want to help, and the frustrations, and often, in my experience, they often end up blaming each other for the child. So I just wanted to hear, from your point of view, how it was how the project was presented to you, so that you could say, yeah, let's give this a go.
I think a key factor here, and Sarah, do sort of chip in as well, I think a key factor was that the school were in the position where they had a CAMS link worker in the school, and so who were also trained in NVR, lots of experience in NVR, and they basically sold it to the school. I think I'm right. Elizabeth, Sarah, please correct me if I'm wrong.
That's right.
Can I just say, Carmen and Jacqui, because we have very little time left, they have already reminded us that we need to stop very soon. Could you just put something in the chat quickly, what you're taking away from today?
Yeah.
I really get a practical approach for non-violence, and I will definitely try it with in my school.
Yeah, and just following on from what Jane said, as I say, we recognized there was a need for change as a school. Through as we said, our CAMS link worker, who said, have a go, try this. We then had the small project with the 30 members of staff who really bought in, and we saw what a difference it could make. And then through that, recognized that we could roll this out a little bit wider. It did help that we had a change in leadership at the time as well, so we were a little bit more free to try new things, shall we say.
Yeah, I will try to be more empathetic and connect with the problematic students, and try to resolve the problems in a non-violence way.
That's great. Do you have any other questions?
For me, I think we have very little time, but there's something about the importance for, you see teachers almost becoming like counselors, and many teachers are quite under strain. There's a lot of pressures kind of to get things right with Ofsted's, and that's why my curiosity was, it's like you hear, well, but I have trained to be a teacher, not to be a counselor. It's like, of course, it's a form of protest, because they are living with it. But yeah, that's why I was kind of, I suppose, having the experience and seeing others going through this is what motivates them, isn't it? To say, the question then goes away. It's like, maybe I'm okay with being also a counselor. It's the relationship with the students as well.
Yeah, it's all about that relationship. And we're all here. We saw it in our school, our new school principals. We're here to learn and work hard. That is the focus.
Right.
Therefore,
I have to stop the recording now.